We're good to go.
Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I would like to introduce our new Planning Commission Administrator, Ms. Tamara Blake Wallace. Tamara has 30-plus years of experience with the Department of Planning and Zoning. And prior to accepting this position, Tamara was a principal planner with the Long Range Planning Section, where she assisted in the development of the County Comprehensive Plan, Transportation Plan, and the ongoing Prince Frederick and Dunkirk Draft Master Plan process. Tamara was also responsible for overseeing architectural review and reviewing development plans for consistency with the adopted master plans. And she represented the county as a voting member on the Metropolitan Planning Organization and its associated committees and programs. Tamara is very familiar with the department and development review process and procedures, and has represented items before the Planning Commission on many occasions. With that introduction, I would like to turn the floor over to our new Planning Administrator to take you through the agenda.
Thank you, Carolyn. Welcome, everyone. I am Tamara Blake Wallace, Planning Commission Administrator. This meeting will be conducted as a hybrid meeting, allowing for both virtual and in-person participation. Serving as moderator tonight is Christine Goldsmith, our Planning Commission Development Review Coordinator, who will now go over the rules of etiquette for this meeting. Christine?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Chris Goldsmith. As she said, I'm the Development Review Coordinator for Calvert County Planning and Zoning, and I will be moderating this evening. This meeting is being recorded on both video and audio for record-keeping purposes. For those attending virtually or on a phone, please keep yourself muted to ensure no interruptions to the evening. If you're asked to speak and you are attending on your phone, you can mute and unmute yourself using the phone's designated mute button or by pressing *6. If you are on a computer, you can mute and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone mute button on the toolbar on the bottom left of your screen. You can also mute and unmute by using keyboard shortcuts. Windows, you will press Alt-A. On a Mac, you would press Command-Shift-A. When questions or comments are requested of the public, those attending in person will be asked to speak first, and those attending virtually will speak after. If you are attending via phone and would like to ask a question or make comment, when asked, please use the raise hand function, which would be *9, and you'll be called upon in turn to identify yourself for the record and speak. If you're attending virtually and would like to ask a question or make comment, please go to the chat icon on your Zoom page and type your comment into that section. Finally, please say your name every time you speak for the benefit of those calling who cannot see you.
Thank you, Christine. I will now turn the floor over to our PC Chair to call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Tamara, and congratulations on your new role.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the Calvert County Planning Commission's June 15th, 2022 regular meeting. My name is Maria Bueller, and as chair of the board, I will now call this meeting to order and take roll call. Vice Chair Kernan?
Here.
Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Commissioner Freeland?
Here.
Commissioner Toohey?
Here.
Commissioner Dr. Holler?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. If you will now please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tamara?
Thank you. Item number 3, action on the proposed agenda. Madam Chair, we do have a deferral for tonight. It was deferred by the applicant. Item 6, for a major subdivision for final review and action. Item 6A, SDFP-138224, Patuxent Commons for the final plat certification.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda.
Motion to amend. Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Kernan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? And one abstention. All right, and then, do I need a second motion for
the agenda as proposed, or is?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed agenda with the changes.
Motion to approve this evening's agenda with changes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kernan and a second by Commissioner Tui. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Tamara?
Next item on the agenda, item number 4, action on the proposed summary of actions. Item 4A, May 18th, 2022, regular meeting.
Does the Planning Commission have any changes to the summary of actions? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Kernan and a second by Commissioner Tui. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tamara?
The next item on the agenda is item number 5, recognition of persons attending the meeting. Tonight, from the Department of Planning and Zoning, we have in attendance Mary Beth Cook, Director, Judy Makel, Deputy Director of Zoning, Carolyn Sunderland, Deputy Director of Planning, Jenny Plummer-Walker, Long Range Planner, Rachel O'Shea, Zoning Planner, Christopher Sperling, Historic Preservation Planner, Jennifer David, Rural Planner, Olivia Vedado, Planner 3, Judy Holt, Planner 2. From the Department of Public Works, we have Carrie Dull, Director. We have C.J. Jones, Capital Project Supervisor. We have J.R. Cosgrove, which is the Deputy Director of Public Works, and Jason Levitt, the Project Engineer. From the Department of Parks and Recreation, we have Bob Branham, Deputy Director, and Amanda Stillwagon, Park Planner. Also in attendance with us tonight are John Mattingly, providing legal counsel, and Becky Parkinson, serving as our recording clerk. The next item before the Planning Commission, we skip item 6. We skip item 6A, and the next item is application for site plan review and action. Cspr 142813, conceptual site plan for the County Administration Building, Redesign, 150 Main Street in Prince Frederick. Olivia?
Good evening, everybody. I am Olivia Vedado with Planning and Zoning, presenting CSPR-142813, the conceptual site plan for the County Administration Building Redesign, also known as the CAB. This development proposal meets the criteria to be designated as Category 1 site plan, which requires approval by the Planning Commission. So this project was before you in September at the regular meeting on September 15th, 2021, and was approved at that time under CSPR-138334. This is a revised plan with the following changes from the previously approved concept plan. Overall scope of the building was reduced by eliminating the communication center wing. The elimination of the wing also allowed the proposed building location to be adjusted to maintain more of the existing parking, thereby eliminating the need for the previously proposed parking lot in the wooded area on the north side of the property. Deletion of that parking lot also reduced the amount of forest clearing and allowed for all of the monumental and specimen trees located on the property to remain. If you could click to the next slide, please. Thank you. This is the tax map that just shows you where the property is. Next slide, please. And the topographic map shows you on Main Street. And in this one, I believe the building is still there that has now been torn down. Next slide, please. Architectural, this sheet is the one that shows the front of the building at the very top, which is what everybody seems to be the most interested in. I do know that we also have a thumb drive that has all of the architectural plans on there. The Architectural Review Board approved this plan as you see here before you. Go to the next plan, please. Thank you. So this is the revised site plan. The site plan was accepted by the Technical Evaluation Group at their meeting on March 23rd, 2022. Staff has reviewed this for compliance with the Calvert County Comprehensive Plan, the Calvert County Zoning Ordinance, and the Prince Frederick Town Center Master Plan and Zoning Ordinance, along with other county ordinances and regulations. The property is located in the Prince Frederick Town Center within the Old Town District and the Old Town Transition District. Due to the irregular shape of the parcel, the site is restricted for the location of the building to be where the existing building is currently located, which is also pretty much in place with where the old building that got torn down was. This will allow the best vehicular access from Main Street, maintain the existing access from the adjacent parcel to the east that has the state building, keep access to the existing parking spaces on the adjacent parcel to the north, maintain most of the existing parking spaces on site, and promote less disturbance overall. Also, the connection for the vehicular access that is proposed between this parcel and the adjacent parcel to the south, that's also owned by the BOCC, is staying in place as well. Parking requirements did change. The parking requirements are outlined in the staff report, and based on the new square footage and taking into account the other buildings, since the parking is shared, the total parking required is 363. They do have reductions for the shared parking that's agreement for that building adjacent on the south side. And they're providing 8 dual-port electrical vehicle charging stations, which also gives them a credit for 16 spaces. So the overall total required parking spaces are 287, and they are providing 287 spaces. The previously approved variance from the Board of Appeals under case number 21-4075, which was approved September 3rd, 2021, for the variance in the building height of 75 feet is still valid for this application. The 2 variances for removal of the 4 trees that qualified as specimen trees and monumental trees are no longer applicable, as that area will not be disturbed for parking with this revised layout and design. This did require approval by the Prince Frederick Architectural Committee, and these plans have been approved with no conditions. The engineer will submit a site plan, a detailed site plan, to address any outstanding comments from the conceptual review, and also provide complete details and information to address all of the county, state, and or federal regulations, along with landscaping for the parking and building, lighting, a photometric plan, bike racks, and all the amenities. The next submittal will be reviewed by all appropriate agencies and revised until all the agencies have approved the plan. This plan will not come back before the Planning Commission unless there are significant revisions to the plan as presented here, which is pretty much what happened from the last one that you all approved. Staff recommends approval of CSPR-142813 with the following conditions. There is a replatting that is required for the forest retention areas, stormwater management easements, and any other easements necessary. That will be submitted for review and approval after the first review of the detailed site plan. It must be recorded prior to final site plan approval, and it will also be noted on that site plan. The existing parking spaces are non-conforming as determined by Mary Beth Cook, the director. A reduction to the setback requirements for the proposed new parking spaces was granted by the Planning Commission Administrator on September 7th, 2021, and the reduction was granted as it has been demonstrated that the requirements of Article 6-2.01, Table 6-1, Footnote 5 can be met. All outstanding comments from the CSP review shall be addressed with the detailed site plan submittal. Those comments are also attached in your agenda package. Any significant deviations between the concept plan and the detailed site development plan with regard to layout design and standards and all the amenities listed here would have to come back before you and be approved. Approval of a conceptual site plan by the Planning Commission shall constitute a conditional approval of the proposed development as to character, use, intensity, and basic compliance with the applicable plans and ordinances, but it does not guarantee final approval of the detailed site development plan. Approval of the conceptual site plan application must be approved prior to the submittal of the detailed site development plan. This conceptual site plan shall expire 12 months after it has been granted approval, unless a detailed site development plan application has been accepted by the Department of Planning and Zoning for distribution and review. So I will be happy to answer any questions, or the staff or the engineer, which are all here, if there are questions that I can't answer. And then after that, your next steps would be to either approve with the conditions as listed above as recommended by staff, approval with modification to those conditions recommended by staff, deferral if the Planning Commission requires additional information prior to action, denial of the project, which will require the applicant to make substantive design changes and resubmit to P&Z for agency review prior to consideration by the Planning Commission. So again, if you have any questions that I can help answer, or staff, or the engineer.
Thank you, Olivia. Commissioners, do I have any questions or comments?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
At the prior meeting, we had discussed stormwater management, and we were going to get some things that were going to be a fine example to our private building community, if I remember correctly. Is that accurate? Do we have that now?
I would turn that over to Public Works to answer.
Well, thank you so much.
Eric Cosgrove, Deputy Director of Public Works. So in our eyes, yes, we're using multiple ESD devices to treat our stormwater. We show some microbios. We're using pervious pavement. There's possibility for some green roof on the terrace. Those are a lot of those you don't see on most commercial development within the county because it's difficult to use them. The maintenance on pervious pavers is difficult, but since it's a county facility, we feel we'll be able to maintain it. Since it's our facility, show the developers how you can maintain it and the best way to construct them. Microbios are more of a standard practice nowadays with commercial, but that's why we're looking at doing some other things when we can.
What is the microbio, please?
A microbio retention facility basically stores a certain amount of volume of water depending on what it's designed for the drainage area. It has planted materials in it. It has some plants in it to help absorb the nutrients. Depending on the soil type that it's constructed in, it might or might not have an under drain to help bypass the water so it dewaters at a slower rate at a non-erosive velocity to the environment over a 48-hour period of time.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you a question?
Madam Chair, I have a question as well.
Yes, sir.
Olivia, what is the current height restriction in the Prince Frederick Town Center?
I believe that was listed,
This one's at 75, so
right,
what
they
I'm
went
at,
to Board of Appeals for that, and I
Okay.
believe that the height restriction, was, so I believe it was 55, and I do have a note on here that I did not read out loud. The actual proposed building height is 57 feet with a 16.75 facade that's intended to screen the HVAC, because they are required to screen that, so that's what puts their total height at 73.75. But they did go to Board of Appeals to get that approved for the 75 feet.
okay. And the second question is the parking spaces. You said that we have 8 charging stations that'll be going in, and so that gave them 16. What, can you explain that?
So there is a condition in the ordinance that if you provide the electric charging stations, you get credit for 2 spaces. So they're providing 8, and it's a dual charging station, so they get credit for 16 parking spaces. And that's throughout Prince Frederick. Actually, that's throughout most of the county, I believe.
Thank you.
Yes.
No more questions from me.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can somebody give us a rundown on who's going to be occupying the building?
Once again, J.R. Cosgrove, Deputy Director of Public Works. So the majority of the building will have the Board of Commissioners room, county executives, administrator's office, the county attorney, of course, the BOCC hearing room, our TS department, our HR department, our economic development department, planning and zoning and inspections and permits, Department of Public Works, finance and budget, environmental health, and soil conservation. The 2 departments that will be Parks and Rec. I believe it was determined they'll stay at the HEB building, which is where we're currently at, Harry Elizabeth Brown, and our Community Resources Department, which will currently stay there at Duke Street where they are now.
So the structure's large enough to get you out of the rental properties?
So the objective for the building was to get us away from leased properties. So every property that's being leased for a county department, those departments will be coming to the county admin building, and we're utilizing other facilities we currently own to try to keep more of a campus feel with our departments.
One other question, JR. Is there any subsurface stormwater retention on site planned?
No, there's not, other than if you could consider the pervious pavement, because there's storage within the pavement that's below the surface. There is some storage within the media, the microbios, not much, but, you know, they do consider 40% void ratio within there. But there is no subsurface under the standard term, no.
So based on your current plan dealing with the stormwater, at what level, at what amount of rainfall do your structures cease to hold the water on site?
I believe the PE, which is the volume of water retreated for the environmental site design storm, I want to say it's probably around 1.8. I'm looking back at my engineer, because Joe Konzeski from COA, he's our consultant.
Good evening, Joe Kajeski, Collins and Olfen Associates. So, Wilson, this is a redevelopment project, so it's kind of hard to determine exactly what that PE number is, because basically, from a water quality or environmental site design standard, we're treating 50% of the existing impervious area plus 100% of the new. And we're only adding about 3,500 square feet of new impervious area. So it's a little bit difficult. I don't know that number off the top of my head. But just keep in mind that the ESD is based on a 2-year storm event. And then because it's redevelopment, the reason we're not really required to provide underground storage is that we're not increasing you know, any of the larger storm events discharging at the property. Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Hearing none, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item?
No hands seen online.
Okay. Yes.
Come on up. Just state your name, please.
My name is Bob Estes. I'm representing myself today. Many of you know me already. I was curious about where your parking is. I think you can see the obvious ones. Are you also including the parking that's more or less in front of the state building?
So any of the parking that you see that we count is on the property that's owned by the Board of County Commissioners, which is on this parcel site as well as the parcel to the right, if you're looking at the screen, which is the south. It's jointly combined. We're counting the square footage of both buildings and counting the parking on both to get that cumulative parking.
Okay. Well, that was a prelude to my other question, my real question, which is you have under building parking there, which is a footprint that you could hold in lieu of for future growth to the building, which you have said you've built into the building. You could accomplish the parking that you need to take over those spots, which is, I believe, it's 18 spots, right? By sharing some of the parking that the state has. The state is currently using less than half of the parking they have, and on their worst day, they still have 150 parking places. 150 parking places that do nothing but, you know, produce runoff into the watershed. I think it would be a good thing to consider using a sharing agreement so that you could either reduce the footprint of the building or use that space under the building, kind of under the building, where the parking is for potential growth or other purposes. And I think some of you got my paper on that. You got the details. I won't bore you with that. And I will be very interested in seeing if those tiny little micro bioretention ponds are capable of doing the job. They're nowhere close to those sorts of facilities that I listed in the paper that I gave you. So keep your eyes on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I respond to that?
Sure.
So early on, when we were looking at this project and not sure if the parking was going to be adequate for the design, and the design has changed many times, I did start looking into acquiring a shared parking easement with the state building in the back. They do have a lot of parking. And the two people that I have talked with at the state level were not interested in doing a shared parking. But on top of that, you also have to quantify the square footage of that building and add it to your count. So that increases, which increases the amount of parking that's required. So you don't just gain that number of parking spaces by adding it, because you then have to add that square footage into the count. But again, I had reached out to several people, and 2 people came back and just said they were not interested at all. So we had talked about sharing all of it, because there's parking on these 2 parcels that's in the front of their building, as well as we could use parking that's in the back, but it wasn't getting anywhere. And then the redesign, before it came to you in September, had gotten to the point where they were meeting the parking requirement then. They meet the parking requirement now, so staff did not pursue trying to get that agreement.
Thank you.
Olivia,
Doesn't mean that we
can you
can in the
share with us
future.
who in the state government you were corresponding with?
I will be happy. I had sent information up to Eric Florence. I'd be happy to go back and pull my information and give that to you guys.
You know, as you know, the county had a 20-year maintenance agreement with the state for that Louis L. Goldstein District Court building. And when I was there, we worked directly with the State Department of General Services. I don't know if she's still there or not, but Wendy Napier.
I believe Wendy is still there. That's not who I talked to. So, I mean, I'm certainly happy to reach out to her as well and look into that. Does the county still have the 20-year? I didn't think so. Because I recall something about the county being involved with that. Tell I've been here a long time too, right?
Chairs.
JR, Deputy Director of Public Works. As far as I want to address the reason we have the parking beneath the building. When we were looking at this, and part of it's for security for the elected officials. I mean, you all hear the news, you see what happens in the public. So we wanted to provide a secure parking area for the elected officials and their guests that come to the hearings or just come in on a daily basis. That's the main reason for the parking beneath the building. It's easier to secure. If you put that out into the parking, it's difficult to secure. And that's the main reason for it. And if for some reason out in the future you could ever need additional space, maybe you could be turned over then. But the area that, when we started looking at the square footage that departments need, you could maybe fit one of our smaller departments in that area, but it wouldn't justify removing the parking to do that. We wouldn't lose, the square foot of the building really wouldn't change drastically. You might cut 10 feet off of the length, but that's about it. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Was there anybody else that wished to speak? Do we have anybody online?
No online hand seen.
All right.
Might I add just a small additional comment? You're already sharing parking with the state. That parking area, which myself and Dr. Claudia here survey multiple times a week, that's essentially used by people going into that state building. I sat there and I watched them and I count them. You're already sharing, so maybe the state ought to reciprocate by perhaps sharing that piece of that lot that's 21 spaces just to the east of the current building and a short set of stairs up the hill. Just thought I'd mention that in case you
Thank
do
you.
end up trying to get a share. You're already sharing.
Believe me, we know.
Here.
I almost think they share more of our parking spaces than we share of theirs, yeah.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Any more discussion from the Planning Commission? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, for the matter of CSPR-142-813, Conceptual Site Plan for the County Administration Building revised, I recommend approval with the conditions 1 through 6 as listed.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Kernan. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Freeland. All those opposed? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Tamara?
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, item 8, items for discussion and or action. We have 4. Item 8A, Department of Parks and Recreation, Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan. And tonight presenting, we have Bob Brannon and Art Thatcher, the consultant from Berry and Dunn.
Hi, good evening. I'm Bob Branham, Deputy Director with Parks and Recreation. As stated, we're here for the Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan, and I'm joined by Mr. Art Thatcher of Berry Dunn, and without further ado, he will lead us through the presentation.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to present a summary of the Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan. The LPPRP is a 5-year requirement by the state of Maryland in order for each of the counties to be eligible for state funding for Parks and Recreation. And so this is part of that process. Next slide, please. So the process that we went through, and you can see the schedule, we started in August of 2021, and from there in the October-December timeframe, we did our site visits, we did public meetings, we did our survey to the community. Following that, we had our staff people came out and we visited all of your parks, looked at all of your amenities, we GIS'd all of those, and we do a component-based inventory for all of your parks. And so we looked at all of those components and developed an inventory and an atlas for the county. Following that, we held our findings and visioning. So we took all of the data that we had collected, presented that to staff in a findings presentation and to the community, got feedback from the community, and then began looking at developing our recommendations and action plan for the LPPRP. Following that, we developed the draft. The draft was reviewed by staff and then was sent to the state for their initial review, and we got comment back from them. We addressed all of those comments, presented that back to staff, and then we were here yesterday morning, presented the final plan to the Board of Commissioners, and we're here tonight to present this to you for your consideration. So as we look at the community profile, we use a couple of different, Esri Business is the data source that we typically use for our community profile. We also use the Maryland Department of Planning in some of those instances, and so this is part of that community profile that we've developed. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we held, as I said, we did stakeholder focus group meetings. We also did a community survey. Those stakeholder focus group meetings kind of is basically a SWOT analysis. So we asked about the community's perception on strengths, weaknesses, needs for amenities and programs and facilities. And so as we gathered all of that information, one of the final questions we asked is, through all that process, what would you say your priorities are? And so you can see the list of priorities here. The bar represents the number of times that it was brought up during our meetings. And so adding turf fields, adding a multi-purpose indoor complex, upgrading your amenities at the current parks and facilities, and then scheduling, permitting process, kind of developing that are really kind of your top 4. Next slide, please. And so this slide really should have come before that last one. But so we did staff engagement. So we did a focus group with the staff. We did a SWOT analysis with the staff. As I said, we held focus group meetings, which had 40 participants within that. And then we held 2 public meetings to get feedback from the community. Following that, we use the input that we get from those meetings to develop our survey. And so we mailed out the survey, and we received 1,013 completed surveys back. Next slide. This gives you a little bit more detail for the survey. We mailed out 3,500 was our initial mailing to the county, and then about 10 days after we started getting returns in, we sent a postcard reminder to those that we had sent the initial mailing to, and then we added about another 10% just to get a better return. So we got 438 returns from the invitation, which we typically look to get a 10% return. That's the statistic validity piece of it. So we got greater than 10% on that, and then we got another 575 from the open link. The open link is the exact same survey, but we keep 2 separate URLs so that we can preserve the statistic validity of that first mailing, and it's a random sample mailing. Next slide, please. And so some of the key findings that we received from the survey was that your residents, the majority of those that responded were long-term residents, 20 years or more, and the largest percentage location-wise, they were able to self-identify where they lived in the county was from the Chesapeake Beach area at 18%, and then Huntingtown at 12% of the return. And as you look at the survey results in the report, you'll see that we got a pretty solid return from all of the locations within the county, so really got a good representation of the county. Transportation to parks, we asked about how you typically get to your park, and so not surprisingly, automobile was the greatest, and we asked them about how far, at 59%, we asked them about how far they drove, and it was between 1 and 9 miles to get to a recreation amenity that they use. We asked about their satisfaction, how satisfied they were with the amenities that were provided by the county, and on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very satisfied, that the majority, 58%, represented at between a 4 and a 5%, so currently very satisfied. Future needs, we asked about future needs, what would be important to them to improve, and so trail-based recreation, nature, wildlife-related recreation, and water-based recreation were those top 3 that we received from the survey. Next slide. So we also asked about park usage, and we asked them kind of what they use the parks for, and so walking, bird watching, and going to the beach were the top 3, and so that kind of in that passive recreation realm. And then a quarter of the invitation surveys were more in that active recreation area. We asked about communication, how well the county was doing on communicating, and we really received it a 3.3 again on that scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very effective. Came in at a 3.3, so there's some room for better leveraging the communication. It's not surprising. We hear that every survey that I've ever done in the 10 years that I've been doing this, communication is always one of those areas. And it speaks to the ability to have a mixed method approach to your communication to your citizens. So not depending on one avenue. And what we're hearing more and more is emails from the locality, as well as social media, and then typically your recreation guides and those things are those top 3 or 4 that we hear. And so then we asked about importance, quality of life for the agriculture and land preservation. And you can see again on that scale of 1 to 5 that was very highly sought after. 4.3 and above were those returns. Again, talking about that trail-based recreation, wildlife, nature, and water-based. And then we asked about kind of the parks in your facilities, and the most important thing was to maintain your current amenities, and then new trails and recreation opportunities. Next slide, please. This will show you some of those some of the data from the survey. This was about participation and the things that they do. You'll see the column on the right-hand side is the open link, and then the column in the center is the invitation, and then we combined both of those to give the overall. And you can see that in most cases, the open link pretty much mirrors within about 5 points or so what we get from the invitation survey. There may be a couple of different differences. One that you can see is playground use and general play. With the invitation sample is 28%, where with the open link is 49%. Typically what we find is with the open link is we have younger families that take the open link survey because it is more kind of in that social media realm, and so which is why we see that playgrounds jump out there, because typically they have younger kids. Next slide, please. We also asked about importance, what would be important to increase your participation, and you can see additional facilities and amenities, followed by improved communication about the offerings, additional programs and services, and then more amenities were really your top 4. And those amenities being shade, water fountains, those things, those convenience and comfort amenities. Next slide, please. And so, again, we talked about the importance of the agriculture and the land preservation and, how they would rate that to their quality of life. And so really, you can see that it's all very important to them, but those top couple are protecting the environmentally sensitive areas, your wetlands, your floodplains, and your steep slopes, preserving and protecting and conserving the natural resources, and preserving the county's historic and archaeological resources. Next slide, please. So again, it talked about, we looked at all your amenities and we mapped all of those. And one of the things that we do is we look at the drive time, since that's the way that most of your citizens get to your amenities. And you can see that we kind of look at, the 0 to 5 minute drive to a facility, 5 to 15, and then greater than 15. And as we look at your facilities and your population area densities, that 87% of the population is within a 15-minute drive to a recreation amenity and a facility, which is very good. Next slide, please. So as we collect all that data and we kind of look at what those recurring themes are, and these are not in a priority order. Those recurring themes are improving your connectivity, trails, greenways, kind of multi-use paths, renovating and improving your existing facilities and parks, addressing your aging infrastructure, balancing the rural character of the county as development of facilities and amenities occurs, improving your communication and outreach, increasing your natural open space and green space, addressing the need for facilities in underserved areas, increasing access to the water, water-based recreation, adding athletic turf fields, a new recreation center, and then completing the park development projects that you currently have in your CIP. Next slide, please. And so we take all of that data and all the information that we've gathered, and we begin to look at goals and how they fit into goal areas. And so the 4 goal areas that were in the previous LPPRP, since this is an update, fall into this same category. And so it's improving and enhancing your existing parks and recreation facilities and amenities, continuing to improve your programming and your natural resource opportunities, continuing to look for opportunities to develop new facilities and amenities, and then improving and strategizing your organizational efficiencies. Next slide. So from the goals, we begin to develop recommendations, and then under those recommendations, there are action steps, and the action steps are all in the plan itself, which you've been given a copy of. And I'm not going to read all of these verbatim for you, but as we look at those recommendations, so appropriating funding mechanism to meet the identified needs from the facilities for improvements and additions, looking for opportunities to increase the public sense of safety. That's like lighting, landscape design, those things. Addressing your deferred maintenance, completing your park development projects that are in the CIP, and then continuing to evaluate your athletic fields for potential for increased use and the possibility of looking at turfing some of those fields. Next slide. So under that second goal, we look at evaluating your existing facilities, utilizing the current all-hazard mitigation plan for relevant flood mitigation, making open space a key consideration when pursuing new properties. As new programs and services develop and are implemented, making sure, kind of staying within the Natural Resources Division, continuing to create that balance between your passive and active recreation. Continuing to engage and partner with the municipalities, businesses, and states for current and future natural resource programs, continuing to look for opportunities to expand your special events, and also continuing to follow the land preservation goals identified in your current comprehensive plan. Next slide, please. So the third goal is we look at those recommendations of new facilities and amenities, exploring opportunities to acquire land suitable for development, especially for public water access and water-based recreation opportunities, continuing to develop the Harriet Brown Community Center, looking at the evaluating and prioritizing replacement and renovation needs for all of the facilities within the county, just staying on top of that. Continuing to work with other agencies and the municipalities in the county to provide regional connectivity, neighborhoods, schools, parks, and communities. So making sure we're keeping that connectivity up. considering the development of a countywide bike and pedestrian plan associated with the steering committee that's currently kind of looking at that. And then next slide, please. So again, improving and strategizing your organizational efficiency and taking measures to gauge the county, the community on successful methods of communication, ensure that we're working with your community, researching and implementing strategies to improve the accuracy of your park data, making sure you're keeping up with your GIS data and keeping up with the atlas that we've provided. Maintaining your accreditation. It's a great thing that you're accredited through Cspr and the National Recreation and Parks Association, and keeping up that accreditation. Working to assure that staffing levels and pay rates are appropriate to make sure that you can fill your positions and provide the level of service that you're currently providing. Continue to engage the community in current and future park recreation open space planning. Continuing to promote and create awareness of programs through the development of your county's website and social media. And then continuing to engage young individuals in the planning and implementation. So making sure that we're kind of meeting your users and engaging them in planning their programming. Next slide, please. And so it's kind of a quick rundown of the kind of how the plan was pulled together and the recommendations and goals and objectives that came out of that plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Madam Chair, I do have a question. You discussed the park satisfaction ratings.
Yes, sir.
Was there any input given or chance to give input on what it was that was affecting that park satisfaction?
There, in each one of the questions, there is an other.
Okay.
So we do, and the county does have all of the open comments that we received.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great plan, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Madam Chair, just one quick question.
Yes, sir.
So the turf field part, I'm just interested in that. It's I know it's an very expensive proposition, but that was countywide. That's what the response was from folks, that's what they want.
Yeah, okay. This came up at with the commissioners yesterday as well. So what we do is through the focus groups and the stakeholder meetings, typically they are users and they represent your athletic leagues or those type things. And so within that small group of 40, it was one of the top priorities. So we heard it the most. And so the reason that we use multiple data points is that what we do is we use that to develop the survey, which goes countywide. And so within the countywide survey, which we got 1,000 plus responses, it was more in the lower 50% range. It wasn't the number one priority. It's still a priority. And as we kind of look at it and as we make the recommendations, your fields are being used and they're being what we call loved to death. And so because athletics are no longer seasonal, so there's not a downtime for a field to recover because they're playing year-round now. What we find is many communities are going to supplementing their natural turf fields with synthetic turf fields, so that there are opportunities to give your grass fields a season off so that they can repair and they can recover and move those games over to a turf field.
So when I'm looking at the stakeholder priorities, you're not talking all of the county, you're talking, what are we talking? Because it looks like that's the top priority, like if you look at this, right?
That came out of those stakeholder and focus group meetings. Yes, that's true. But that was a small section. That wasn't that was representative of the users, but not necessarily of the entire county. The survey results represent the entire county.
So where did that fall within that?
I would have to pull up the survey and see.
We don't.
Okay.
We can get to that.
Yeah, like I say, it was in the bottom 50%. It was.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
It appears that the data is kind of skewed a little bit because you're looking at a group of 40, which is comprised of people who use the field, athletic leagues, teams, that kind of thing, versus everybody in the county.
Which is why we do all of those data points and not just go out and talk to 40 people and
Yeah.
say, this is what you need to do.
Gotcha.
Any other comments, questions? Do I have anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this?
I do too.
Would you like to, one of you at a time, come up?
Jan Lease, and what it is why isn't King's Landing, the pool, going to be open? I mean, all different kinds of plans and things we can do, and we have a pool, and my understanding is they're not opening it this year, correct?
The pool is actually open for swim team use and some camp usage. The department is experiencing such a shortage with staff, department-wide. Not more than 4 to 6 weeks ago, we were about 143 staff short. We've gotten that number down to about 98 last I heard. But we are struggling to hire staff, but we just got a report from our aquatics division chief that there has been an influx in the last week or two, and we're hoping to reopen, if it not be for full hours at King's Landing, but after the Independence Day holiday, we may be able to expand some of the operating hours there for open swim. But it's purely numbers of us not having staff to properly staff the pool and meet.
You've got a lot of different things you're proposing that are going to be costing a lot of money. What if you pay the people more money? I think if you offer a higher salary, you'll get the people.
So we actually just did that. We actually, as a department, went and we identified our aquatic staff as first responders, which got them a bump in their hourly rate to become more commensurate with the area. And then the Board of County Commissioners just approved a percentage increase. So it, July 4th is the first pay period. It will go up 21% for the hourly rate. So that's already been addressed, and we suspect that that's why there's an influx in the applicants recently.
So my suggestion is just keep upping it until, if you pay them well, they're going to come.
Right.
Thank you, thank you. Is there anybody online that wants to speak?
No, Madam Chair.
Oh, is there, yes, sir.
Was there any consideration made to adding additional public?
Can you have just say your name for the record?
Please.
Thank you.
Liese. Was that come up as a possibility of additional public golf courses? Was that in the survey or discussed or considered in any way?
Yes, it was, but there was not a great emphasis on additional golf courses.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to direct staff to schedule a joint public hearing with the Board of County Commissioners to approve and adopt the 2022 Land Preservation Parks and Recreation Plan.
Motion by Commissioner Jones. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tui. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Tamara?
Next on the agenda is item 8B, Department of Planning and Zoning, text amendment case TA number 2201, amendments to the Calvert County and Salomons Town Center zoning ordinance to permit assisted living facilities within the D1 sub-district. And we have Rachel O'Shea, zoning planner, who will be presenting.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning. If I may, I wanted to explain how we got here tonight with this text amendment. So typically, text amendments get proposed by developers, staff recognizes a need, or the Board of County Commissioners can propose one. In this case, we're here because of an error. So a developer hired an engineer for a project for assisted living in Salomons and proceeded in good faith working under the Calvert County zoning ordinance that is on the website. That is not our official document. And it was determined through the review that assisted living is not proposed, is not permitted where they were proposing one. So they went to economic development and worked with them, and economic development made a recommendation that we do allow assisted living in the sub-area. So Rachel's going to walk you through the research that staff did and the proposal for the text amendment.
Thank you.
It's a fairly quick presentation. The purpose of tonight's proposal is, or work session, is to review and discuss the proposed text amendment. This is number 22-01. It's to permit assisted living facilities within the sub-district D1 of the Salomons Town Center. And then to request from the commission to direct staff to distribute for agency comment. So next slide, please. So we received the department received a request from Economic Development to propose this text amendment to allow assisted living. Because of the error, but also because it makes sense and it is aligned with our county's comprehensive plan. On the slide is a zoning map of Salomons that shows all of the sub-districts. We're talking about D1, which is kind of in the center and is shaded white. This text amendment would be consistent with the descriptions of the types of uses for the Salomons Town Center sub-district D1. It is currently described as designated for primarily mixed uses, as is C3 sub-district to the south. To the north is districts D2 and D3, which is designated primarily for residential uses, and sub-districts D4 and D5 to the north of those is yet again described primarily for mixed use. If you could go to the next slide, please. This slide shows the key to the land use charts for the Salomons Town Center, and then below is the description color-coded of what I just explained. So if you can go to the next slide. And then this is the Salomons Island use chart. So you'll see in the middle of the chart a red P, that's the proposed change, which will allow assisted living to be permitted within the D1 sub-district. Next slide. So like I said, this is relatively short. We currently have 2 assisted living facilities in Salomons, and assisted living is really needed in the area. So I think this would be a very good project for the Salomons Town Center. And like I said before, it is consistent with a comprehensive plan that encourages assisted living facilities as well as nursing homes within the town centers. So at this time, we would like to request direction to distribute for agency comment, and then at the end of that agency comment period, we would return to you to review those comments before moving forward.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions, comments?
I have a comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
This is coming up because of a project at the Holiday Inn where they want to put assisted living, I'm assuming, correct? Do we know how many units, because there's going to be that's going to be a permanent structure, permanent residents moving into the Salomons Town Center. So how many are we looking at? Do we know?
Yes, they submitted a concept plan, and they are proposing 103 assisted living and memory care units and 77 independent living, which is apartment type unit.
And are those new units to be built, or are they a conversion of part of the hotel?
It's quite a bit conversion. There is, and certainly we can bring back, you will see the site plan eventually.
Right.
But I think their intent is to keep a lot of the existing building.
So was this an error on the website?
Yes. So we have a consultant that maintains our website. The official Calvert County zoning ordinance is a paper copy in our office. That's correct.
So there was a discrepancy between the official and the
Yes.
website?
We've since had it fixed.
Back to Commissioner Jones.
Okay, so the other question I have is, it's 103 units, but that could equate potentially to 200 people. That's what I'm trying to get a number of, like, when you say units, it's a unit, like it's a room, correct?
Yes.
So that could be 2 persons, yeah?
That's a good question, because right now, the hospital does single unit rooms.
Okay.
So assisted living,
That could
I'm not sure.
maybe 50-50, just,
Could be,
Right.
or could be all single, could be all doubles. Yeah, we can clarify that.
and I'm asking the question because I'm also, not not to dive too far in the weeds on this, but I'm hearing the potential of a proposal for a hotel right next to this living facility. So I know you haven't heard that, but.
Yeah,
So-
nothing's been submitted.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Do we have anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this? Is there anybody signed up online?
No, ma'am, no hand seen.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to move that we direct staff to distribute for agency comment.
Right.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Tui and a second by Commissioner Kernan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Next on the agenda, Historic District Design Guidelines, Agency Reviews. Chris Sperling, Historic Preservation Planner, will be presenting this item.
Hi.
Hi, good evening. Chris Sperling, Historic Preservation Planner, Department of Planning and Zoning. This is about the Historic District Design Guidelines. In fiscal 2020, the Maryland Historical Trust awarded a grant to Calvert County Department of Planning and Zoning to update the Historic District Guidelines. The guidelines are a document that are used by historic district owners, of which there are just over 90 within the county. And this gives them direction to how to maintain, how to rehabilitate their properties in a way that is consistent with historic preservation standards. The Historic District Commission utilizes these guidelines as a way to adjudicate historic area work permits and historic preservation tax credits. The revised guidelines include things like new materials, new technologies, accessibility, and things like this that will update the existing guidelines and bring them into current best practices. So far, the Calvert County Historic District Commission has approved these. They went before the Board of County Commissioners for a work session where they were advanced to the Planning Commission for a work session. The Planning Commission then directed us to put this for agency comment. The agency comment, interagency comment period occurred between May 9 and May 27. We received 3 formal comments, 2 of which were formal non-comment comments. Those comments are attached. The one that we have that was a proper comment came from the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland, and the 2 comments they had were regarding putting more information directly in the document regarding the historic preservation tax credit. And then they asked a question if we give information regarding how to remove the historic site designation from a property. That's also not in the document. Both of those items were discussed at the Historic District Commission meeting last week, and the sense of the commission is that these items can change, and as you can see, the Historic District Design Guidelines, it's been 20 years since they've been revised. So we think that it is better to reference the current and official documents in case they change, rather than to make what may change integrated into the document that we have and provide to the public. As far as recommendations, we recommend that the Historic District Guidelines are advanced, and we are seeking direction from the Planning Commission to schedule a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the County Commissioners for adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions, comments? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this? Anybody signed online?
No hand seen.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Ms. Chair, I recommend that we schedule a joint public meeting with the Board of County Commissioners to discuss the Calvert County Historic District Design Guidelines.
Second.
Right, I have a motion by Commissioner Kernan and a second by Commissioner Jones. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 8D, the 2021 Maryland Department of Planning report. And tonight, Judy Holt will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Tamara. Can you hear me? Good evening, Commissioners. Judy Holt, Planner 2 with the Department of Planning and Zoning. I'm presenting to you tonight the 2021 Calvert County, Maryland Department of Planning Annual Report. Title 1-207 of the Land Use Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland requires local planning commissions to prepare, adopt, and file an annual report with the Maryland Department of Planning. Also required is that the annual report be made available to the county's legislative body so that informed direction may be given for the need and development of appropriate and necessary studies, or to establish the undertaking of other actions to ensure the continuation of a viable planning and development process. The annual report is divided into 6 sections, and I'm going to go through the sections with you, and there'll be a slide. Section 1 would reflect the residential permits issued in 2021. A total of 184 permits were issued. 75 of the permits were located within the priority funding area, and 109 of the permits were located outside the priority funding area. This was a decrease of 149 permits from 2020. Next slide. Section 2, this includes information regarding amendments and growth-related changes in development patterns. This information is found on pages 2 through 16 of the report. The requested information includes the text and map amendments, also site plan and subdivision projects that affect growth and impact the priority funding areas. It is determined whether the projects are consistent with the comprehensive plan and other department plans. The projects are taken directly from the capital improvements plan project list, and I've included only the projects from 2021 where funds were allocated to construction costs. Next slide. Section 3 is the development capacity analysis information. This consists of the maximum development capacity potential in Calvert County, Maryland. The numbers are divided into those properties located in the priority funding areas and outside the priority funding areas. Every 3 years, the Maryland counties are required to update the state with a development analysis report. The last report from Calvert County was provided in 2018. As noted in Section 3 of this report, we have had no significant changes in the zoning since that time. Therefore, a copy of the 2018 Development Analysis Report is included with this report. And the next Development Capacity Analysis Report will be due in 2025. Next slide. Section 4. This provides information on the agricultural land preservation and local land use goals. In 2021, we had no new APD easements. A 78-acre easement was added to the Rural Legacy Program. Currently, we are in a PAR cycle that began in August of 2021, and that'll end in June of 2022. The next section would be the measures and indicators. And this information, it reflects the amount of residential and commercial growth inside and outside the priority funding areas. The data is obtained from the minor and major subdivisions and Category 1 and 2 site plans that were approved in the year 2021. Section 6, this is the adequate public facilities portion. We had 2 schools that were reporting above the state rate capacity at the close of 2021. They're Mount Harmony Elementary and Northern High School. Also in the report, the requested letter from the Board of Education was not received, and that's noted in the cover letter and in the report. We just didn't get it from them. We did have a meeting last year that with the Maryland Department of Planning where they said it's not required, it's requested. So maybe they already know that, and that's why we haven't gotten one in a couple of years. Included in the report is the APF biannual report. This is for the 2020-2021 years, the 2 years. And the next report is due in 2024 for that. Then next slide, well, leave that there, yeah. Now, Section 7 is an optional question, and I didn't have a slide up for that. That's about the bicycle and pedestrian plans, which Maryland State announced available grants to Maryland last year for the counties for bicycle safety and access improvements. And Tamara provided an update in the report about what's going on with those funds at this time. So that you should find that in the report. That is it. If you have any questions at this time, I'll take questions, or the next steps would be that you can choose to take one of the following actions. That would be adopt the 2021 annual report as presented and direct staff to send the report to Maryland Department of Planning and a copy to the Board of County Commissioners. And 2, adopt the 2021 annual report with any suggested minor modifications and direct staff to send the report to Maryland Department of Planning and a copy to the BOCC. Or the last one is to direct the staff to make specified changes and bring back the report for reconsideration at the next Planning Commission meeting. So that's it.
Thank you very much.
And Judy, I think you should tell them that the data is specifically requested from MDP. So it's not like we come up with this information, they ask the questions and we answer.
Oh, yeah. It's just based on an actual report they put together and send us, and we just, answer the questions as we go along. So, right.
So Judy, who's going to do this report next year?
I have no idea. Some lucky person.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Greg.
Any other questions, comments? Anyone from the public? Anybody online?
No hands or comments.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I would move that we adopt the draft Calvert County, Maryland State Annual Report 2021 as presented and direct staff to send reports to the Maryland Department of Planning and a copy to the Board of County Commissioners.
I have a motion by Commissioner Toohey. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Kernan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Next on the agenda, item 9, items of interest, site plan and subdivision application list. This information is for informational purposes only. No action is required.
Commissioners, any questions or discussion?
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I will move on to the next item. Item 10, public comment. At this time, we will open the public meeting up for public comment according to the Calvert County Ordinance number 51-21. The Planning Commission Chair will first request comments from those attending in person and then from those attending virtually. Speakers, whether in person or participating by phone or virtually, will be limited to 2 minutes. As individuals, for 5 minutes, if they are designated to represent a group organization. Or is there anyone in person who would like to make any comments? Could you go to the microphone and state your name?
Yeah, my name is Dave Lease. I'm a government engineer and I work for the Navy, but I'm interested in economic development for the county. And in particular, I would like us to consider modeling the country of New Zealand and what they've done. There's a lot of similarities between the Chesapeake Bay and the bays around New Zealand. The only difference is they grow $300 million worth of oysters a day and we grow practically nothing. They've also developed kingfish. They have a massive amount of export of fish, and they can't even meet the supply. There's such a demand for food worldwide and the interest in fish and things like that. There's been a lot of technology, this idea of flip farming and oysters and things like that. I was wondering, do we have any plans in this county to take advantage of the natural environment we have to expand our ability to grow food for the world and improve our economic situation? That's a question anybody could answer. It's not, this is just a public comment for you to speak. Okay. I don't I don't sense that we care a whole lot about economic development using the potential we have in this area. That's my comment.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak? If not, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to comment?
I don't see anyone attending virtually with hands raised nor comments made.
Okay, if there are no other speakers, the next item up is item 11, adjournment. Madam Chairman?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Kernan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending the meeting, and have a good evening. And if you haven't signed the attendance sheet, please do so before you leave. Thank you.